Hey everyone, it's me, Ryan, or SReaperG, or SRG, or just some guy on YouTube. It's been a while since a video has been out on this channel, but you know, we got some big life stuff happening that pulled me away for a bit, unrelated to this whole YouTube thing that we're doing here. But I'm here now, and what better way to come back with a video about the soon-to-be released Elex 2. A lot of us are off playing Horizon, or Destiny, or Elden Ring, and I'm also playing Horizon, and hopefully soon to be Elden Ring, but I'm here to talk to you today about Elex 2. Now, I wanted to do a full review for this game for you all to be out in time for the embargo date, which is today, or whenever you're listening to this, it was in the past, but I was given a code just on Tuesday, and this nature of this game is just that there's so many ways of playing this game, there's so much content to explore, that I didn't really feel comfortable doing a review, so I figured I would just do an impressions video and give you an idea of my brief time with this game. Right now, I'm about 20-ish hours in, and I feel like I've barely scratched the surface of the game, so hopefully you'll find that my perspective here is a little valuable to you as someone who's never played the first game, but we'll get to that in a bit. I hope you enjoy this video. I'll have a full review on my channel later, but either way, let's talk about my impressions on Elex 2. Oh, and subscribe if you end up liking the video. Admittedly, as I just said, I haven't played the first game in the series before. Now, I have purchased it, and I do have it, and I'll get to it at some point. I don't know when, maybe soon. I know why listen to me then. You haven't played the first game. I don't know shit. But hopefully you'll find my perspective here at least worth listening to or entertaining. Now, Elex 2 has the feel, in my opinion, of that late Xbox/PS2 or Xbox 360, PS3 era RPG. The kind that maybe don't play the best and have a considerable amount of jank and slow, stilted animations that make you feel like you're a guy whose primary diet is cocaine and crystal meth, and while high, he is asked to run through quicksand. However, something I will note is that these games also have a charm to them and deep systems that are easy to just get lost in, with worlds that are filled with cool things to find and interesting lore to get lost in. Divinity 2, the Dragon Knight saga, comes to mind for me, and also Two Worlds. Goddamn, I love those games, but you won't see them on an awards list of best RPGs of all time, but they are in my heart though. And that's all that really matters. Now, I may not have experience with the first game in this series, but Elex 2 thus far harkens back to those old titles for me at least, and that's a compliment. Now, visually, Elex 2 is not the worst looking game out there, at least in my opinion. I actually rather enjoy the art style, that kind of mix of medieval and science fiction with a touch of the post-apocalypse, but it actually makes this game rather enjoyable to look at. And if not at first, definitely the more I played, the more I was like, I kind of like this style. I kind of like how it looks, how it feels. Is that look or style generation defining? No, but it doesn't need to be. It looks crisp enough not to be distracting, even if things like facial animations look like that claymation project you were a bit too ambitious for in college, but didn't really have the patience to learn claymation or even make the full project, because claymation takes a long time. Respect to claymation experts out there. So it looks like this, but again, looks aren't everything, and nothing looks distractingly low res. So with that in mind, the worst you'll have to contend with here is stiff animations, and maybe not the most responsive of combat, but that's a whole other topic. Again, nothing that will ruin your enjoyment here, but you'll want to take note of it as you play the game, or if you're interested at all. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here down in the comments, but I'm just going to tell you that this is where I think Elex 2 picks up. I think it picks up roughly where the first game ended. The invaders, the Skyans, are here, and they're wreaking havoc across the planet of Magellan. You begin this journey with Jax shortly after they have arrived, and he's tasked with creating an army of soldiers and companions to defeat them and drive them back. Now, after about 20-ish hours or so, that's about as much development the story gets. It starts off with this big event and this invasion beginning, only to then slow down immediately in favor of driving you toward these factions and quest lines. I have no idea thus far if it's going to pick up again later, but for now the story is very bare and there's not much driving you forward, at least as far as the main plot goes. And this could change, but for now, I do find it a bit underwhelming, at least in regards to the main plot. And to be honest, you won't even care, because I actually found the dynamics between the factions kind of absurdly interesting the more that I played, more so than they let on in the beginning. But as you continue your flashbacks, or rather you continue your questing, you get flashbacks of past events and even insight to the characters' relationships with Jax. I talked about the story being really uninteresting, at least at the start, at the get-go, but once you get into these various quests and these dynamics and even the factions, it kind of fills out the world and it gives it its character that it's lacking, at least thus far, with that story. That could pick up later, but that's just how I feel so far, at least in regards to the main plot. But I think it fills out really nicely with all these quest lines and these factions and their dynamics and how they coexist with each other. And that's really the gist of Elex's world, is a bunch of factions vying to survive and gain a leg up on the other, while they find it relatively easy to undermine each other at the cost of greater threats facing the world. That sounds absurdly familiar. Actually, way more familiar than is comfortable, but that's where a lot of your time is spent, trying to solve problems for the factions and mend your relationships personally with them. The fun part about Elex 2 is that you can seemingly play for a good chunk of the time before ever even joining a faction, or maybe even not join a faction to begin with. And that's a testament to the sheer amount of content there is to experience and the ways you can go about playing this game. At a glance, it can feel kind of goofy and even silly in a way, as you see characters talk about Elex and Elex shards, and you're just kind of like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? But of course, I'm talking as somebody with no knowledge of this world and its dynamics, having not played the first game. I can confidently say to you here, if your worry is, can I jump into this game with no knowledge of the first game and the characters in the world and not feel completely lost? Can I jump into it without skipping a beat? Yeah, I would say so, definitely. I mean, for me, it is a slow start. And at first you might feel a little bit out of the loop in the beginning, but they do a great job of feeding you enough of the story from the previous game and bits of information here and there so that you won't feel so lost for so long. You'll only feel lost maybe a little bit in the beginning, but once you get the hang of it, it's really not too bad. But really what we're looking at here in terms of what is the game, gameplay is the most important thing here in Elex 2. And in my brief time with the game, I can say that the gameplay is at times a little frustrating because it does feel clunky and often can make you feel like you're fighting more with the game and your controller than you are any of the enemies you might encounter. It almost has the feel of a Souls game without being punishing, because of the pinpoint hitboxes and mistakes you made, but more because Jax is one stubborn SOB who just hates being told what to do. And I mean, relatable, right? But like, I'm trying to play a game here, man. Like, I got control of you. You don't got control of me. Or maybe he does have control of us. That's something we should look into. Who do we call about that? I will say, as far as PC goes, I have been informed that there are ways to change key bindings and whatnot, so maybe there's ways you can make it a little less clunky, at least in regards to PC. But as I played on mostly on console, I really can't speak to that. At the same time though, the game becomes remarkably more enjoyable, at least in my experience, the more you level up and get better gear and weapons. I can't specifically speak to the improvements made from the original Elex, but I've enjoyed running around and fighting at times, fighting enemies. There's actually quite a bit of ways to play this game that I'm really impressed by. Some of them I haven't even discovered yet. For example, I haven't even dabbled with the magic yet, so I can't really speak on that. But it's clear the amount of depth there is in all these skills you can invest in, like crafting or ranged weapons like bows and arrows and guns. And while they don't always feel great to use overall, as I'll get into in a bit, they're fun to play with different builds, with tons of skills to unlock and attribute points to allocate, with tons of flexibility to build Jax as you choose. And also, that's one of the benefits of joining a faction, is that you get access to more advanced skills that those factions offer. Berserkers do magic, the Alps have energy weapons, and so on. Melee combat right now for me feels the best, and the hits have weight and enemies respond in kind to your strikes. Now again, none of this is as finely tuned as a AAA or even AA title, but in the time I've spent with it, I have found it well tuned enough to provide you with enough responsiveness to not always feel like you're floating through time and space, but that you're landing hits and strikes. Though that does happen kind of frequently. For example, the lock-on could use some fine-tuning, as sometimes it feels unresponsive or just jumps between enemies when I didn't mean to, especially when using ranged weaponry. Losing your aim is a consistent thing, but overall it's all passable, and just the sheer variety of experiences that you can have building your character and the type of weapons you can find and use means I'll probably likely have way more to say the more that I play this game. But as of right now, I kind of just enjoy that surface level flexibility this game is seemingly able to offer you with different playstyles, even if it's as something as simple as trying to resolve conflicts before they become violent, or focusing on non-combat skills like lockpicking or hacking or even crafting. Finally, let me just say, the jetpack kind of sucks. It does. I'm sorry. I know that's the chief way you're going to be going around, but hear me out here. At least at the start, the jetpack sucks. It's given to you as a quick way to get around, but you can't do much or hover for long, and it's like, why did you give this to me then if I can't do anything with it? But it's another thing you can level up and upgrade, and once you do, it's kind of a blast to get around with. Quickly upgrading that jetpack is a must. Upgrading that jetpack is such a must, and it vastly improves your experience with the game. And I know that sounds very negative, but the more I've played, the more I've become attached to the game and its gameplay, even if it's not the premier gameplay experience or the smoothest or the slickest. I just kept coming back and want to play more of it despite the issues that I mentioned above. And I'm kind of addicted to this game despite all that. I'm thinking about it right now while I'm talking to you about it. I mean, I'm talking about it, so that's why I'm thinking about it. But when you get your hands on the game, you'll know what I mean. It just has that like hook into you that I can't really describe other than to say you need to try it out for yourself if anything I said has interested you. Now, thus far, we have talked about visual impressions, gameplay impressions, and story, and that's just impressions right now. I haven't played the game fully to give a full review or stamp of approval, but now I want to touch on the audio here. Overall, not bad. I can't claim to be an audio engineer or expert, but I know a few things. There are some issues I have noticed with the processing of different audio cues. For example, when standing in water and using the jetpack to get out of that water, the water makes this unbearably loud splashing sound that spikes and is very unpleasant to listen to. Further, there does seem to be an overcompression on the voices at times where it can sound artificial and almost forcefully limited in volume. It's not an aggressive sound, and maybe I'm going crazy, but I only notice this while playing this game while listening in on a pair of headphones. Even then, you might not notice this. The music hasn't really stuck out to me much beyond it being enjoyable to listen to when it comes to most areas. It's serviceable and enjoyable, and I'll have more to say in the full review, but right now it's good and has an undeniable charm to it. Voice acting itself is actually, in my opinion, pretty good. It's not going to blow you away. You're not going to think, wow, holy crap, that was a great performance, but it's also convincing and believable. The voice acting itself is actually, in my opinion, good. It's not going to blow you away. It's not going to make you think, whoa, that was crazy. But it's also convincing and believable for the most part, even Jack's at first. I wasn't sold on, but the more quests I did, the more I grew a liking to the voice acting, as well as the voice acting of the rest of the characters in the game. On the heels of Elden Ring and Horizon being a little less polished than many of us have anticipated or had anticipated for AAA titles, I would be remiss if I didn't briefly mention some of the bugs and performance issues that I experienced on PS5. Now, frame rate, I believe, is at 30 FPS with no performance or fidelity options. Not a big deal, but I don't think the frame rate here is capped at 30, as it definitely feels to be higher than 30 frames at times. It does experience some drops occasionally, mostly remaining consistent throughout though, which is good news, so it's not terrible. I spoke with a couple of my YouTuber colleagues who have experienced the game on PC. Check out Last Known Meal and click for gameplay if you want more in-depth views on this series and people with more experience on the game on PC. But for them, they discussed the frame rate dropping pretty aggressively in major towns in the game and cities, so that's something you should look into when deciding which platform you get Elex 2 on. I also know that they're probably going to have full reviews out for their channel, so you should check those out too. I also had some weird shimmering issues on my screen at times, most notably when looking at the map and moving the cursor around, though it does happen when in normal gameplay, and while that's not the worst thing that happens in the game, it's notable enough that you should be aware of it. There's also times when environments flash almost like they're just fighting for their survival, like fighting to keep the game running or showing you what they're showing you. None of these issues were substantial enough to take me out of the game, and the worst of which is the game freezing one time on me, just one time. And even in that, in about 20 hours of gameplay, that's the worst I have experienced in regards to bugs and performance. I'm sure that there might be more if I really think about it, or at least as I play more, but right now those are the most notable that I can think of and that I've recorded in my own gameplay. If I seem overly critical of Elex 2 here, it's only because I wanted you to be aware of the jank and the clunky nature of the game overall. But as a package, right now in my short time, I am really enjoying this game. I keep coming back to it, making more progress, learning more about how to play and what to do, and getting more quests, and truly, my impressions, despite the issues that I mentioned, are overall pretty positive. I like this game a lot, and I plan to spend a lot more time with it, and by that time, I'll have a full review ready for the channel. But in the meantime, I hope you found this video interesting and that my perspective was worth hearing out, as you'll likely see reviews popping up here and there about the game. So I want to know really what you're thinking about this game. Are you going to get Elex 2? Are you interested at all? Give me some of your impressions if you just started playing it, or if you're going to be playing it. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I look forward to sharing more of my thoughts with you, as I am a basic bitch noob working on this sequel that I have never played the original to. Now, thanks for watching. I hope you consider subscribing, or at least just dropping a like or dislike on the video. Either way, I appreciate you, and I'll talk to you all soon.